together.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, sir.
Well done.
Welcome.
Well done. How are we doing? How are we doing? How are we doing, guys? How are we doing? Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. I'm so excited about this panel. It's great to see leaders, right, locally, across Africa, and globally, right, on this stage. Okay, my name is Oluseye Johnson, right? Was that so hard? I don't know. But I think what we want to get out of this, right, is a lot has happened within the industry, right? We've been doing this for a little while. We're talking about becoming more mature, right? Becoming more attractive for investment, for partnerships. So I think out of this, we want to get learnings from similar markets. We want to see what have we learned, right, from proven models, you know, from global markets. What are key enablers for maturity, right, for our ecosystem? And then just generally draw parallels, right, across African contexts. So I think we know Hugo, right, and a couple of the people on this panel, but I think it'll be only right, for us just to introduce ourselves, right, and a little bit about what we do. So maybe I'll start with you.
Good morning. My name is Kossoko from a country called Central African Republic. It's a country in the middle of the continent. I build games, and today I'm also working on how we can make money with video games in the continent.
Thank you. Hugo.
Yeah, my name is Hugo. I'm the founder of Maliyo Games. We're a mobile games development studio based here in Lagos, Nigeria.
Now my microphone is working. Hello, everybody. I am Soukayna. I am Moroccan. I work as a business developer, and I used to be a producer in the AAA industry for Virtuos, which is one of the biggest co-development groups in the world.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here with you all. My name is Temi Afolabi. I work at Xbox within Microsoft, and I work in global expansion across Africa and the Middle East. And that involves finding games from Africa and the Middle East to put on the Xbox platform, and also market entry for the company in those regions. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So this is going to be really, really interesting. So Hugo, I want to start with you, right? So I mean, you've been at this longer than most, right? When you look at the industry, right, and how far it's come, right? There are learnings and there are unlearnings, right? Especially because you're putting together this brilliant report, right? That's giving the insights into the industry. So what are some of the toughest, right, market assumptions that you've had to unlearn in building your games for both African and global audiences?
So I have like three ways that I look at it. So I look at it as like the known knowns. So these are the things that we know that we know. The known unknowns. These are the things that we know that we don't know. And then the unknown unknowns. These are the things that we don't know that we don't know. So at the very beginning, I think that those three spectrums have changed. So at the very beginning, the known knowns was very small, the known unknowns was large, and then the unknown unknowns was very, very large. As you mature, that, you know, like, because the known knowns are the things that you know, so you just go ahead and do them, right? And then the things that you know that you don't know, you then go and figure out how to know them. But the things that you don't know, you're not even thinking about them because you don't even know. Yeah. So that's the question that I constantly ask myself now more, because now the known knowns is a large portion of what we do on a day-to-day basis. So production-wise, you know, we're pretty good. We have, you know, like key skills in every single discipline required to make games. Every single discipline required to make games. So we can pretty much make and ship. Easy. The known unknowns are the things that we know that we don't know. So it's now figuring out who knows them and can we bring them in? Do we need to hire them in? Do we need to partner with them, right? And that's that's where going to conferences like GDC, Gamescom is very beneficial because you get to meet a wide variety of people, and you have targeted list of people that you want to connect with. That's where doing some of the work that we do gives us some leverage and some benefits, because then we can easily get introduced to the key people. So I'll give an example of a known unknown is AI, right? How do you implement AI into the production process? So you know that AI is important, you know that you have to integrate it, but you don't know how to, right? So now you need to start to figure it out yourself as one step. You can go and hire people who have those core competencies as another step. You can also start to talk to people who are already very advanced in leveraging AI for their production work, as an example, right? But AI is a known unknown. There was a time when AI was an unknown unknown, which is people don't even know that AI should be part of their production. And then the biggest one, obviously, is that unknown unknown, which I think is the one that plagues a lot of studios. When you look at things like marketing, distribution, monetization, where they have very little or no clue as to how to do that effectively.
Okay, so we actually have one more esteemed speaker who's going to be joining us on stage. So I think you'll be doing us the honors.
Thank you very much, sir. Again, guys, remember that name I told you that I can't pronounce? This is the name. Again, please, I beg you, no laughter. We're not joking here with the name, please. And to the bearer of the name, please, I ask for forgiveness in advance, because even though you mentioned it to me like 2-3 times, I promise you I heard, but I didn't hear. And so I'm going to try my best. So guys, I want you to welcome with me on stage. Please make up for the name that I can't pronounce. Just clap with all your energy. Please welcome on stage Original Initiative of Games Connect Africa, who seeks to build a strong, interconnected, and sustainable gaming economic ecosystem across the continent, empowering local talent and fostering collaboration at every level. Oh God, my heart is beating. It's time. Please welcome with me on stage, Vulane Mthembu. Vulane Mthembu. Put your hands together for Vulane Mthembu, all the way from South Africa. Put your hands together. Clap, clap, keep clapping, keep clapping, keep clapping. Welcome, sir. Welcome.
Vulane, welcome. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to do the same thing, right? I think he didn't do a bad job with the name, right? But maybe you want to, put it out there. So just introduce yourself and what you do.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Vulane. No, it's fine. It's not. The name is not what I was more worried about. Vulane, I represent the Goethe-Institut, Johannesburg, and yeah.
Awesome. Great to have you on the panel. Yes, please, round of applause. Okay, so one of the things that I love that you mentioned, right, is finding out the known unknowns, right? The things that you need to go and connect, right, with other markets, with other ecosystems for, right? So, Teddy, right, I think, you set out to solve one of the biggest, right, gaps, and maybe known unknowns, right, within the industry, right, with Gara. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey, right? And then, maybe some things that you've learned, right, in trying to solve such a huge gap.
Uh, Thank you for your question. This is the subject of my presentation. uh, the thing is, the thing in Africa is the fact that, you know, we used to have a lot of data. We used to, you know, when you grow up in Africa, you are in the ecosystem. We think that when you bring something to people, they are going to sometimes behave like in Europe, like in US, but we notice that after years of putting money, doing things, developing things, trying many things, that our people are behaving differently. Even for, you know, African entrepreneurs, sometimes very disturbing. And the thing is also, we have noticed that even in the 54 countries in the continent, there are a lot of similarities between the countries, except maybe in the north part of the continent. For example, Morocco or Egypt, they are behaving differently. But in the rest of the continent, in Africa, we have done tests in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Ghana, DRC Congo, Togo. Most of the time, we have same data, and I'm going to talk about some of the data later. Because we are facing the same issues in all of these countries: internet connection. Most of the users don't have the high quality smartphones. It is most of the time Chinese smartphones. People are, for the moment, thinking that gaming is just for entertainment. They don't, really understand what is behind it. They don't really understand that it is an industry. The other thing is also that even in Western countries, governments put a lot of money in the development of the ecosystem. And in Africa, governments we have, except maybe in South Africa or in countries like Morocco and in a few countries here and there, maybe a little bit in Kenya, in the most of the continent, most of the countries in the continent, they don't understand the thing for the moment. Look at recently, the Nigerian government put gaming and betting in same, bucket, calling them, gaming, but it's not true. It's not the same thing at all. So what we have noticed also is the fact that if we want, the ecosystem to succeed, we have to think differently, totally differently than what we have observed in the Western countries, because we are all human, and when you want to do something, you are going to try first to see what people did in some countries abroad and try to do the same thing in your own ecosystem and see if it's going to work. And some people used to say, oh, in Indonesia, it was like Africa a few years ago, and they succeeded to do this and that, so we are going to do the same thing. And many people are trying things, we are trying things, and the results in Africa is a little bit different than what we can observe somewhere.
Thank you. I love that, right? There's discussions around advocacy, right, that we need to have as well, right? Because a lot of the support that needs to happen for the industry will come from that understanding that this is something that's just more than entertainment, as you said. It's a key part of entertainment, but, that just entertainment, right, needs to change. So, Soukayna,
Yes.
how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome, I'm great. So, you have worked on, hundreds of games. You've worked across different kinds of markets, right? And I love that Teddy was talking about, this Pan-African understanding, right, about what works. And then also even where people are saying, oh, we need to build like other markets and it'll work. And yet, there's still some gaps, right, in some of the models. So, from a lot of your experience, right, working across these different markets, are there certain proven models that you're starting to see work, right? But actually, you know what? Where we should start with, for many of the people in the room, is let's define what co-development is first of all, because I know co-development is such a huge thing, but
Yeah.
a lot of us might not know about it. So please, let's start there.
Well, this is a bit of a spoiler for the half an hour. So you're taking 15 minutes out of my half an hour I'm going to speak later, which I'll need to populate again. So thank you so much for that. But what co-development is, co-development, basically for everybody here with me that might not know what it is. It's a open secret in our industry where actually none of the studios that make big games that you love to play, like Call of Duties, your Fortnite, FIFA, all those big games that you play are not made just by the studio that you see the logo of. It's made by a constellation of different studios of different sizes, each bringing a different type of expertise. So some people are going to be specialized in making the jerseys of your favorite football clubs within the game. There's some people who are going to be specialized in creating, for example, the AI of the players when they kick the ball, for example, or the fields, or the cheering, or maybe do all the game all together. So that's what co-development is that creation of partnership to co-create games together. And there's some companies, a lot of studios do it inherently because it's part of the way big games are made. But there are also some studios like ours that make it their specialty. What they do is only co-create with other studios, big studios, their game. So that's basically what co-development is. A lot of people don't hear about it because you're going to see it in the credit and you're not going to see that big logo splash up. But there's actually no big game that's been made by just one studio. I mean, I can't think of one at the top of my head. So that's what co-development is in a nutshell.
Okay, so just a quick follow-up. So, in terms of many of the different studios and markets that you've worked with, right? And just maybe models that have worked, right? That are baked into the success of some of these development projects. What can we take from that, right?
I think the core of it, as I said, I'm going to go into more details about models in other countries maybe a bit later with some specific examples. But the core of it is two things. It's talent. You need to polish the talent. And polishing the talent is, information is widely accessible. If you go on YouTube or you go to a, Unidev, you're going to learn how to code, how to design. But if you want to bring your game at the level of the expectation of the global market, when it comes to quality and when it comes to specific skills about, how to use Unreal Engine, what is ray tracing, what does a concept artist do compared to, for example, a texture artist. There's some nuances when you get into that higher stage of quality that are really, you can't learn just from watching things. You have to actually do the work. And to do the work, you need money to do the work, because it takes skills, but also people, knowledge from other places. And as I said, what co-development has allowed countries to do, at least, I'm going to bring a lot of examples, but a lot of the emerging game creation market. And I think it's very important to make the difference between the development market and the consumption market. For example, because maybe Nigeria and the African continent has some specificities when it comes to consumption. They need mobile, all kinds of things. But when it comes to development, to be honest, the word is all the same. It's, whether you're making your game in India or making it in Pakistan or you're making it in Nigeria or making it in Europe, you're using the same tools, the same quality standards, you're selling to the same market, you account to the same range of competencies. So the point is, as I said, to bring that knowledge within Nigeria, to grow the Nigerian talent or the African talent to be able to get those skills, to reach the skills, to be competitive in the global market. Because as I said, when you publish your game on Steam, you're not just publishing it for Nigerian players. Maybe your marketing will help you, target the Nigerian market, but in real life, a lot of people will play. You talked about Reloaded, for example. There's a bit controversy. It's not coming from African countries. It's coming from the players. And those are the ones that are spending money, actually, unfortunately, on those games. So as I said, it's about bringing that knowledge. And I think that's what's important to the building of a gaming ecosystem. That's number one. And the second thing that's very important to keep in mind is public and political momentum. It's really, really important. A lot of the countries that actually started building an ecosystem brought in talent and attracted that knowledge through fiscal aids, to grants, through the government being in line with that will to create a gaming ecosystem. It's really hard to do that without, as I said, the funding and the willingness of like the governments to help in that growth. So I think part of the, the creation of the ecosystem in Nigeria will have to go through militancy, advocacy, trying to change legal frameworks, trying to bring in your government into buying into the potential of the youth and of the industry within Nigeria. Because I see a lot of kids today, and I hope maybe this is a bit boring for them, but to challenge them and to inspire them to be that voice of change, so that more games that you make and that you like can be made by you and your friends, and you can all play together something that you're very proud of.
Awesome. So, Temi, right? Xbox is, I love that the difference that, was mentioned between the development market, right, and the consumption, right? So as Xbox, you kind of, you see both sides, right? And you're also looking for some of the best, right, development studios, right, across Africa. So what have you seen, right, over the last, say, year and a half, right? What's the maturity like? What's changing? What's good, and maybe what still needs to sort of, move forward?
Yeah, thanks for that question. It's quite a broad question. What have I seen sort of progress over the last few years? I think between when I started in this role about 3.5 years ago and now, one of the first thing that came to mind is the quality of pitches I see now has gone up tremendously. Tremendously. Like, it's night and day. So I'm very impressed by that. And I think that comes from, I think when people see results, they up their game. So when we came in, the first few pitches I saw, I was like, I didn't feel like people were putting enough work into them in terms of different font sizes, not being cohesive, you read a deck and you still have to ask 100 questions because they're not answered in the deck. And then when we started to sort of do more, and that's not just us as well, there's the Epic grants, there's the French embassy, but as more players came into the ecosystem to support developers, you could feel that everyone started up in their game. So now I see a pitch sometimes and I don't even have a question to ask because everything I would have asked you is already in the pitch. And I think that makes a big difference because at the end of the day, gaming is creativity, but if you want to make games, you want to run a business. And so you need to learn how to run a business properly. And that is little things from admin to collaboration, to working with other people, to knowing how to frame your emails in order to get a response. So I think in the last few years, I've seen it shift from feeling like people were hobbyists to feeling like, no, these are professionals trying to do this professionally. And that's been really great to see for me.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so Vulane, for me, a couple of things have been said about, the aspect of advocacy, right? The importance of, where governments come in, right, to driving change, to driving the attractiveness, right, of a market, right? And maybe even changing some of the narratives, right? He mentioned just for entertainment, right? When you look at the potential of the gaming industry, right, across Africa, right, how do you think we should be looking at this from that lens? How do you think, how do we position advocacy and how that can change what's going on across the industry?
No, thank you for the question. It's quite an interesting and very difficult one, I must say. Just my luck to get the most difficult question in the panel. But in terms of policy, I believe that's geared towards more policy as well. Um, in Africa, we have unique challenges, and I think everyone knows that, because Africa, again, there's a saying, Africa is not a country, really. There's over 50 different countries, different policies, different outlooks, different cultural experiences, and so forth. So I would like to speak as well, like I would have to speak more towards more of the southern region in terms of how we are approaching it in terms of policy as well. So as I mentioned earlier, I work for Goethe-Institut, which is a European institute. That's the first departure point, which is quite unique and kind of ironic in this situation. And this is also quite a unique proposition because in the past few years, a lot of the work that has been done around game development in the region is being done by Cultural Institute, which is also very interesting, which might make Africa as well different from the rest of the world. So in South Africa, we have also grappled a lot with getting governments and sort of buy-in into the gaming industry, understanding that it actually has the biggest revenue now. It's one of the major drivers in terms of the economies, how much buying power the gaming industry has. As you know, South Africa specifically spends a lot of money purchasing games, and mostly, of course, these are games made by Western developers most of the time. And although we do have some very established studios in the region, in South Africa, but we try as well, we're trying to actually get the audiences to get into that. I think that we share it across the region, you know, buy-in for the audiences from the rest of the region, from players. What we have done in the last few years in South Africa, when we had some sort of a success, I think in the last 4 years, we've had the government, the Department of Trade and Industry getting involved in gaming, understanding that it's actually you know, a legitimate industry like film or anything else. And we have formed a body called the IESA, which is a body focusing on interactive entertainment. That is an advisory board that actually speaks directly to the treasury in South Africa. This was done in collaboration with our colleagues at IT Think, who started off as a game development studio, but now are also into publishing and also work with the government very closely. What this enabled us to do was actually tap into some of the funds that the government might have that are allocated for cultural and artistic initiatives, to sort of like put some of that in the gaming ecosystem and to support festivals like Playtopia, Joburg Games Fest, Afro Games Week, all those festivals that are taking place, particularly in that region in South Africa. So this has worked for us, but it has taken time. And I know in the rest of the region it's kind of hard. I know my colleagues in Namibia are going through the same thing, encouraging with the governments. We were in Angola as part of the Games Connect recently for the Game Dev Plus. They're also engaging government there. I think with the government, it's going to take the most time in terms of policy, getting them on board in terms of this. But I think we just keep chipping at it. It is a bit frustrating working with them because we also have other challenges around inclusiveness, around representation we need to deal with. And this just adds another layer as well, trying to go with policy, but we are trying our best to attend to as many of these challenges as possible. I don't know if that answers your question. It's quite a broad question.
Thank you. So, I mean, it's interesting how you give the perspective across, you know, obviously South Africa and a few other places, and I think towards, you know, Nigeria and maybe some of the industries that are getting a lot more attention right now, so maybe fintech and a couple of others. And maybe, you know, as you said, representation definitely, right? And also maybe a couple of superstars, right, that emerge. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, you can't ignore, right? Because now it's starting to have influence, right? And it's too big to sort of, I guess, not take your piece out of, right? But thank you so much for that. Okay, so let's look at the two things that I really, you know, want to delve into a little bit more, apart from, say, models, right? So we mentioned talent, right? I think that is still one of the biggest things. It's probably the thing to solve right now, right? For maybe a couple of years, maybe, right? And so, Hugo, right? You've really been working at this for quite a while, right? Even before maybe people started saying that talent was the thing that we needed to fix, because I think you were fixing it for yourself, right? So, you know, Soukayna was mentioning, right, that there are these nuances that are huge. So they seem like very small things, but they're the difference between, you know, a more mature market and that's building greater software and games and ones that aren't. So how are you, you know, what are some of those things, right, that you've seen that are big, you know, things that we need to solve in that area, but maybe are not as known, right? And how are you tackling those?
Yeah, so yeah, talent. I think it's talent definitely is a very important foundational area that needs to be prioritized. But I feel like that the talent development, we are essentially moving to the second phase of that journey. So the foundational side, which is, you know, like learning the basic skills, understanding how to use softwares like Unreal Engine or Unity, you know, differentiating between programming, design, art. I think, like, you know, like you mentioned, those knowledge is accessible. And there are, you know, quite a few boot camps, training opportunities for people to kind of like build those essential skills. I think the next phase is really about the acceleration of the talent. And you can only get that from production. Like, you know, the only way you can learn how to do things is by doing them. And the more you do them, the better you become at doing them. It's that, you know, like that 10,000 hour rule. And what we are doing internally, we just launched a program called Elite. Elite. So Elite for us is that second phase of talent acceleration. Where it's no longer training. So, you know, the Elite program is not a training program. It's an externship. So different from an internship. So an internship is when we bring people into the studio and they're part of the team. An externship is pretty much the same, but they're not part of our studio team. So they sit outside. They have a whole infrastructure built. But we're simulating our workflow for those externship participants or the people who are in Elite, to really give them first-hand experience of what it takes. And really what it takes for production is accelerated learning. You know, remember that point that I made earlier about the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. That's applicable to everybody who works in games. There's nobody that works in games today that has 100% knowledge of everything that they need in production. There's always that thing that you know you need that you don't know how to do, and in some cases, you don't even know, right? And, you know, like it's through dialogue, through discourse, through this variety of experience that you interact with that you then discover that this is now a problem that needs to be solved, right? And our industry is one that is driven by innovation. So, you know, innovation is always at the cutting edge, right? It's always in front of you. It's never quite behind you, right? So we're always trying to solve for tomorrow, right? And one of the biggest, you know, like challenges, and I think this is what Teddy was talking about, is business model, right? You know, like what is the business model for the African market? That is a known unknown. So we know that the current business model doesn't work, but we don't know what that business model is going to be, and that is where that, you know, like level of innovation, critical thinking, problem solving, right, comes in. But going back to the talent, we need to scale and we need to accelerate. And for us, Elite gives us the opportunity to give people experience of working at Maliyo without us having to do the traditional thing of bringing them on as, you know, like interns or employees. And that in itself is also an innovative way of thinking about how to accelerate talent. As we, you know, started off with Game of Africa 5 years ago, thinking creatively about how do we, you know, how do you go from having 2 people to having, you know, like 30 highly skilled individuals? You know, what is that process in a market that does not produce talent? how do you do that? So for talent, for us, is always number one, and we always think critically about how we accelerate that talent, and also, like enable the ecosystem in that process.
Awesome, thank you. So, I mean, Teddy, right, when we think about talent, right, and I love that, Hugo mentioned it's moving to that place of just doing, right? But after doing, you have this feedback loop, right, to see what's working, right? What's selling, what's actually resonating, right, with the market. And you sort of bridge that, right? So after I've built something, right, I'm able to put it on the store, and then we're then able to see what works and what's working and what's not working, right? So what are some of your learnings, right? What is the data saying, right? What are the things that are kind of doing better, maybe? Some things, I mean, it might be too early to still see some of that, right? But what are you seeing that might be working? And one of the questions that I was going to ask a bit later, right, is thinking about product market fit. Who is the real gamer, right? Maybe in Africa, right? Who is really playing, and then who's actually converting into paying customers, right? My money is on middle-aged women, but no, I'm being serious, right? But because I know a lot of them in Nigeria who play. They're professionals who need to, let off steam, and they are buying, they pay, right? So, I mean, that's another question. But what are some of the learnings that you're taking that we can?
So data saying a lot of things, and the main difficulty is to understand, inside this data, the reality, because sometimes you see the data and you can have some different interpretation, and then you do things and it's not working. So it's sometimes, I think, especially for Africa, very, very complicated. This is why I love competitors, because when you have access to the same data, people are going to try different things, and at the end of the day, you can know what is working or not. On our side, and we have tested like 7 business models last 5 years, and we noticed many things. The first thing is people are looking for African content, for sure. Now we know that people are looking for African content. The thing is they don't just look for African content, they are looking for good African content. African population tends to be more and more demanding. They want quality. They are in contact of content coming from Western countries. So if you come and say, oh, just because it is Africa, they are going to be very, rude with you. We saw it. We used to take games coming from different countries, pushing it in different countries to see a reaction of, people. The other things also we have noticed is sometimes you have to push your game not in your country, but outside your country. For example, we used to take some games made in Cameroon, we push it in Côte d'Ivoire, and to say, oh, this game is working well in Cameroon. And people in Côte d'Ivoire are going to say, oh, okay, if it's working in Cameroon, we are going to try and pay. And also, for example, if you have games, for example, in Nigeria, you can push it in Kenya, you can push it in Ghana, you can push it in South Africa, because people are looking most of the time for things coming from different countries. The other thing we have also noticed is the fact that data talk a lot about young people in the continent. 60% of people are under 18. These people don't have money. It's very difficult to, convince our young people to pay. Even if we know that sometimes they go to some arcade places to pay and stuff, it is not enough to scale. And based on our data and experimentation, we know that people from 25 to 35, all of these people working, parents, they can pay easily. We spend time building games for young people under 18, but now, today, we know that for us, it's not the target. It's not the target. These guys are not going to pay. Even if they pay, it's not with these guys we are going to make the billion, in the continent. So we have to target people like families. We have to target women, used to pay for. We are creating love story stuff. It's working. They like this kind of thing. And the last thing we have also noticed is people are looking for, Western content. We can't just build African content and say, oh, okay, we are going to have local stories. And today what we used to do on our side, because we are also building many content for our platform to accelerate monetization and stuff, we are building games, with some, Western thing inside it. We are trying to mix Western realities and African realities in order to create something that can attract people. So yeah, this is all of the things we are doing based on all of the failure we faced last 5 years.
And I think this is probably the trajectory, and I mean, this is the journey that a lot of other ecosystems have had to follow, right? Figuring out what that local but then global approach will be, right? Let's quickly focus on talent pipelines, right? And workforce development, which you sort of kicked off. So a lot of studios maybe here, right, might co-development, that sounds pretty cool, right? And again, this maybe speaks to where we have to level up, right, as ecosystems. What are the bare minimum technical, structural, cultural type levels that you would be looking for, right, when you're thinking of a studio to work with, right? So again, this is how do we, lift up the maturity of, studios to be able to, partner with studios like yours?
Well, it's a difficult question because there's different approaches and different answers I would have depending on the country that I'm dealing with. First is, I think the easiest pathway into getting your foot in the door when it comes to these big productions and working with big studios is that I need to understand what Nigeria is good at, specifically. Not just in big terms of like, oh yeah, we have talents and we have good engineers and we have 2 mobile studios. But for example, when I think of the Philippines, or if I think of India, or if I think of even, even Eastern European countries, I know specifically what they're good at. If I go to the Czech Republic, I know I'm gonna get good rendering engineers that are specialized in all kinds of engines. You can put them in any context, they will create for you tools. If I go to the Philippines or Vietnam, I know they're very good at 3D art. I'm gonna get amazing environments, some great characters, Last of Us levels, creativity when it comes. But when I think about African countries, Nigeria or otherwise, it's a blank. Like, what are they good at? They tell me we have a bit of everything, but like, I don't, look, what's your specialty? Tell me something that I know you're gonna be the top 10, top 5 in the world that's gonna do this. And that comes through, as I said, starting small and building around a specific expertise where we already have cross-functional, cross-industry knowledge. As I said, when I mentioned all these countries, why does, the Czech Republic has good, rendering engineers? It's because they have a robust, C++ programs that deals with very, very basic computing. So there they can transfer that knowledge easily into more close to the engine kind of work. For other countries, it was one art school that pumped up a few, and there was one senior that came and he started his studio, and with it started a talent school inside of his studio where he trained every person that joined his studio, worked on a couple, built a portfolio. It's not really hard to build a portfolio, people. It takes a couple of months. They built a portfolio, they knocked on a couple of doors, they were given one opportunity, they pushed that opportunity, and now they did environment for Spider-Man, and now everybody's gonna go to them because they saw the environment Spider-Man. They're like, okay, if I want that, it's that team there. And from there, they grew from like a group of 5, 10 people into hundreds and like big structural studios. And that, you know, it brings in more talent. Okay, we see they're doing character here, so I'm gonna be adding environment, and I'm gonna be adding VFX, and I'm gonna do a full level. And then there's a couple of devs that they hire, and then or some of them quit and they open their own studio, and they do an IP, an original IP with a couple of devs, but their environment is so cool. Like they have that expertise they build around. It just becomes so much easier for them to compete in the market because they already have the quality, the pipelines, the knowledge. They've seen other production and how they look like. We talk about developers, we talk about artists and designers a lot. We forget that actually the thing that makes or breaks games is project management, is production. And maybe that's my producer hat on that I put on. But that's knowledge that we cannot teach. I mean, I can teach you how to do a backlog, I can teach you how to do Jira, but if you haven't been through the hills and the difficulties and the challenges of a video game production before, believe me, you will fall on your face the first time you will encounter difficulties or you have of like making a full game, because it takes so many different disciplines and they have different incentives. So for a game to look good, it's gonna run very badly. But you need, you know what I'm talking about. But you can't have a game that runs very badly. But if you make it run, it looks ugly. So, you know, finding that trade-off takes skills, it takes experience, managing the people, talking to the people and getting to find that balance is really, really challenging. And that comes only from experience. It's not something I can teach you in a classroom. I can teach you the skills, I can maybe tell you about like common challenges, but it's something that comes from experience. So I don't know if my babble answered your question.
That was awesome. That was awesome. And I'm sure we can talk about that, unpack
yeah,
that,
as I said,
for another.
We can
right?
we can write a book about this. We can talk for days. It's you know.
But the great thing is you have a panel after this,
yeah,
right?
Sure,
Latest. So I think it's really interesting, you know, some of the things that you just mentioned, right? And you know, Temi, you know, I want you to sort of, you know, speak towards this, right? So, you know, I love that you mentioned, you know, the quality of the pipeline, right? You were talking about, you know, project management and production, right? Being one of those nuanced parts that literally lifts the projects, right, to greater quality, and then obviously success. So, you know, Temi, right, you get to deal with a lot of these, you know, studios that you're trying to sort of lift because, you know, you're only going to get onto the Xbox, you know, platform if like it's of a global standard, right? And so, you know, one thing that she mentioned was about adjacent markets and skills. So like in the Czech Republic, you know, really great for, I think you said rendering, right?
And engineering, yeah.
And right, and then because they've got like that C++, you know, they've got great skills in that, and that could be coming from other industries, right? So, you know, when you're working with some of these studios, and then you're also talking to universities, or you're talking across other, you know, industries, adjacent industries, right? How can we sort of reach out? How do we sort of bridge some of these gaps to bring those skills in, right? And really help to, you know, accelerate, right, from where we are to where we need to be to work with, you know, global studios.
So if I understand your question correctly, you're saying how do we position for these things, so external development opportunities? Okay, no, that's a good question because that's something we have looked at Xbox, and we actually started a program in Nigeria. Long story. But, however, I think, and the way that started was one of our AAA studios reached out to me and said, you know what, since we have a presence in Africa now, we would actually like to explore how much external development we can do here versus the regions she already mentioned. And the plan was to come in and spend a few months, maybe 6 months to a year, upskilling these developers, working with them, and then giving them work to do. A lot of that work would have been simple stuff. It would have been small animations, tags on guns, things like that. So we would definitely have started small, but it has the potential to grow. And when I think of how did those studios get selected, it was really as simple as, you know, I was given this brief, we're looking for studios that we think can help work on projects like Halo and so on and so forth. Do you know any in Nigeria? Do you know any in Nigeria? So it was Nigeria focused at the time. It's going to expand across Africa. And then it's then on me to then look at the studios, and which is why I was saying if you're going to run a business, you have to stay ready. Your materials have to be right. If you have a website, you have to make sure you have the best website you can have. If you have a team, you have to make sure your team is prepared to answer questions. You always have to have work to show us that you've done before. There's really no point pitching to anybody. If you're a game developer or doing anything creative, if you don't have something that you can show someone on your phone quickly, that is your work, and that can speak to the quality I can expect from you, then we're just talking to talk. So a lot of it is being business ready, taking what you're doing as a business. If I come and I see there's a structure, you guys have departments and so on and so forth, then I know, okay, when I present this team to international partners, they can have a serious conversation about skill level and how to plug that gap. But if you come into the meeting and we feel there's just too much to do, this is not worth our efforts. So I don't think you have to be ready, but control everything you can control and always have your best quality work at hand to show. Always put your stuff out there. Sometimes we discover teams by YouTube. Like I might just be on YouTube one day and just be looking for Nigerian developers. If your video looks like quality, I will reach out to you. Be on LinkedIn as well. If it comes across my timeline and someone has liked this new demo of your game, so on and so forth, and I look at it and it looks like quality, I'm like, oh, how come I've never heard about that? I'll add you myself and I'll DM you. So stay ready and keep your work at, obviously your work might not already be at the global standard, but always keep it at the highest level you can achieve at any point in time. And then make sure you put that out there for people to see, people to react to. Sometimes you discover something because someone else commented on it, and that's why it's now on your timeline. And now someone that would never have reached out to you has reached out to you because the work spoke for itself. So yeah, I think those would be the main things. Stay business ready and put your work out there.
All right, thank you. So we're going to take our last question. So, Vulane, I think let's end this from a cultural perspective, right? So, you know, even from a workforce development perspective, right, as well, when we think about the games that we're making, right, should we or are we training creators to build commercial games or make cultural statements? Is that important, right? Should African game creators think about digital heritage when they are designing worlds and characters? Because games are more than just, you know, a commercial tool when we think about success.
Thank you. Definitely, the answer is yes, 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 and yes. Because game industry, we call it an industry, but games at their core, they're art, right? So we have to approach it approach the medium like how we approach any creative endeavor, which of course has a different strata that we need to, of course, look at. Of course, artists need to also make a living. That's why the industry part is there. But definitely, they're powerful tools, even more so now than they were before, because most of the generations that are born post, you know, in the last 20 years, they grew up like we grew up in films. They grew up around games. So games for them are where they have first contact with different cultures, different experiences around the world. So political statements, socio-economic statements, things around that need to be now communicated via games. So definitely as cultural institute, that's why as well for the Goethe-Institut, we have had such an interest in games for over a decade now, and we supported the gaming industry across the region and globally. It's really a great thing to see, considering myself, for example, I've been developing games since the late 90s. That's how old I am. I'm a relic at this point. But the change that has happened in the last few decades in terms of where Africa now is positioned, I would argue that in some sectors of the gaming industry, again, the gaming industry is quite large. South Africa has quite a good potential and is actually, if not the leader, is really somewhere in the forefront. So I'll make an example in South Africa as well. We have game studios such as Nyamakop. We have 24-bit games, which has recently been acquired by Annapurna Interactive, and who are our partners for the game dev meetups that we usually have, usually attended by, on average, 180 plus game developers every second Thursday of the month. It's a huge number, and this comprises of people from universities, from studios, and everywhere else. This studio had to be acquired because most of the games that Annapurna was doing were being ported by the African studio to all their different platforms. And now recently you have Nyamakop as well, which has garnered some success with the release of Relooted, run by a good friend Ben Myers, and that has also garnered a lot of international acclaim and also interest because of what is being presented there. Of course, it's a game, I think we spoke about it a little bit yesterday as well. I think it was Temi, right? It was Temi who mentioned it, yes. Temi mentioned it a little bit. But this is a game that is also causing a lot of waves in the industry because of what it positions itself as. It talks about, us reclaiming African heritage, from these museums that are, in the West. So definitely as a tool for social change, I keep changing my mic position, apologies for that. As a tool for social change, games are important. I'd also like to highlight one of the reasons as well that I'm here that will interest as well some of the attendees for the festival. So we've realized since we've been active in the space for such a long time, and actually I found a partner for most, if not all, gaming events around the continent, that we've been doing things sort of in silos, and up till maybe around 5 years ago, we've decided to collate all our efforts around the region to make sure that we sort of bring everything together in one sort of projects, and that's what we find. That's when we founded Games Connect, which is what I was introduced as earlier. So Games Connect Africa is an initiative for the Goethe-Institut to sort of firstly collate all our efforts around supporting of studios, professionalization of studios, mentorship, events in the region into one sort of project. And the reason for that was we realized, again, we are uniquely positioned in Africa, and there's a lot of potential for us to have all our events, Lagos Games Week, Africa Games Week, Chetwako, and all these different festivals in Africa, Asia, to sort of bring them to a level where they could be comparative to Gamescom and all the other ones. And one of the reasons for that was, of course, now, we are sort of circumventing these issues that we have when we as Africans need to now travel to Gamescom, to all of these other festivals. And we thought, why don't we then bring our initiatives to that level so that we have this exchange. We have now people from other continents coming to Africa because our festivals are at that level, like Lagos Games Week and things like that. And as a result, we formed Games Connect, and we have 3 focuses for Games Connect. The first one is supporting of events. This could be game jams. This could be meetups. Like I mentioned, the meetup that we have in South Africa as well has been running for 2 years. This could be meetups that you have for your community. It's around community development. And the second, it could be also festivals. The second pillar is, of course, a bridge project, which has been running. Some studios might be aware of that, and that is around professionalization. And because as a cultural institute, that is not our main focus, but we have to also get a third partner, which in this case was Spielfabrik, that assists us with executing those projects, helping in terms of co-production, co-development as well, getting studios, partnering them with European and other studios in other regions of the world to create games. And that was via the project called Bridge. And also, we realized that the Francophone region has a specific need, and then we structured another project for them as well, for all the Francophone countries, called Passerelle. And all the communication there is in their native language, which is French. And we didn't want to feel, because there was a need for that as well, to cater for those, for that. Again, Africa is not a country, so we've had to think in terms of which region we're working at and tailor our approach for that. And the last one, which is very interesting and that's upcoming, fully focusing on a subgenre of gaming called outhouse games, which is usually represented by festivals such as Amaze in Berlin or Reboot in Croatia. who are our partners. We have also, this is going to be a residency, this is upcoming. There's going to be an open call. So if there's anyone who's also making these sort of art house games focused in the audience, they're more than welcome to join that. It will be a residency in Ghana for a few weeks, and then they'll get to make some interesting stuff there. So as I'm mentioning, we sort of like covering the whole gamut, as you mentioned, from professionalizations, from incubation of the game studios with Passerelle and Bridge and all these sort of things. I mean, there's many things I'm probably leaving behind. I'm just conscious of time. I'm racing through this. And then, yeah, so I think everyone is catered for. And I would just like to also mention the program that when you're talking about heritage as well, we do have an exhibition at the expo, maybe after this talk, or if you get a chance during your break, you can just go and see some of the projects that were done there in collaboration with museums and heritage here in Nigeria. It's the Ecos Games Jam, and we had some games coming out from there based on the cultural experience of the region and things that are relevant to the community and people who grew up in Nigeria and culturally, and they can get to play them there. But also in terms of the festivals, again, we are going to be, last year we supported Feja, which was happening in Game Jam, in Abidjan, that was focused on esports. And this year we will also be at Africa Games Week. We will also be supporting Playtopia. We were at Amaze Berlin. We will be at Joburg Games Fest. I'm just letting you know, I'm putting a whole list now so people, I'm shameless plugging. We're also going to be supporting Chatokon in Ethiopia. We'll, in collaboration with Gamathon, and that will have an edition. They've already had an edition in Kenya. They will be in Johannesburg shortly, and they will be at Fago Games here as well. There's soon to be an announced North African Gaming Festival as well, because we feel like we have to strategically sort of have these festivals across region, Northeast, West, and Southern Africa, and have an exchange of skills across the region. Again, this will help us bring us much quicker and accelerate, get us to the level that the big festivals are taking place in Europe. This could help that. So we have this communication between Lagos Games Week, Africa Games Week, for example, and the soon-to-be-named North African Games Festival. And we will also be initiating the new festival in Kenya as well, which will cater for Tanzania, Ethiopia, and the East African countries. So these are things that are happening to address your question. Long answer, but yeah, thank you.
All right, round of applause, please. And keep those hands going as we thank this illustrious panel. Thank you, Vulane, Teddy, Hugo, Soukayna, and of course, Temi. All right, round of applause, please. We'll just take a quick photo, and then we'll be moving on. Thank you.
All right, so where are my camera people in the house? Please, let's just take right? Smile, everybody.